what's up out there, everybody? Once again, another live stream. Thank you so much to Gibson Guitar for making amazing guitars, but also for inviting me back for another live stream. This time, well, actually, whenever I've been doing these live streams, they've been uh, part of a series called Back to Basics, talking about basic guitar fundamentals. And so this live stream is going to be about some basic music theory. So what is going to be really important to me is, since there's so many different levels of guitar players out there, and I don't know how many of which level is watching, this live stream would be really helpful for you guys to ask me your music theory questions. I don't think I'll be able to get to, every single topic, but I'd like to know the audience, what you guys, you know, what you're what you would like to know about music theory and kind of where you're at with it, and maybe how I can help in a live situation such as this. Now when it comes to music theory, uh in some ways the let me turn this down. In some ways, music theory can be laid out and easier to kind of visualize on a piano keyboard. But if you're always playing guitar, there's sometimes a little different approach for theory. In other words, it depends on your instrument. So if you're straight up a guitar player or a guitar hobbyist, there might be some more theory that we'd like to emphasize over being like a music major in music school. All right. So the first topic I want to talk about, or actually the first thing that I think is super helpful for learning and understanding theory with the guitar, is being able to know the notes on the neck of the guitar, because that way you always have like a reference point for what you're doing. Here, I'll lower this mic a little like that. You can see the guitar. Um, so knowing the notes. Now, really, it's if that's something you don't know yet, it's not something you should sit and memorize. You just slowly start to like see a bunch of songs in the key of A, and you start to learn that A is the fifth fret on the E string. And then from there, you can start putting little things together, like the double dots is where the note starts over of the open string. So if this is the open E, I play the 12th fret, that's the E, the octave of E. So just little things like that. You want to keep exploring and trying to like understand, or at least start to know the notes on the E string, then the A string, and then eventually the whole guitar. That'll help. When I was in music school, the first thing that we talked about in like basic music 101 was actually what are called intervals. And intervals are the distances between like two notes, for instance. So if I have an A note right here and I go to the next note up, it has a sound, it has a relationship between the two chords, and then so it has a name. It's called a minor second. If I go a whole step, that's called a major second. If I go another half step, that's called a minor third. A to D then becomes another name. Perfect fourth is what it's called. And it goes until you get to the octave again. Now, this isn't a college 101 music course, so I'm not going to sit and go through each interval, but it was really helpful, when I was in music school a long time ago. A long time ago, when I went to music school. Um, but we would sit and the teacher would play intervals on the piano, and then, call on you and be like, Marty, what was that? And so you'd have to recognize the sound of the intervals. It's like basic ear training. So those intervals get put together to make scales and chords. And so a really cool theory thing. And Russell from YouTube, how are you, Russell? You're asking about the modes. And everything I said so far will help you to eventually get to the modes and understand them. If we have time, remind me, and I'm going to go back to a very simple mode concept for you. But this is all related so far. So there's a relationship that most songs rely on in like, contemporary music, pop music, rock, even the blues. jazz, everything, right? It's called the 1-4-5. It's a relationship of the three major chords that are in a key. So if I have, I'm just going to pick one out, a major scale, you hear like do, re, mi. So I played, that probably sounds familiar to you. So you have this relationship that sounds like that. And you start on a note and you play that relationship, and it's that first note's major key scale or major scale that has a key related to it. So I picked G, right? And you don't have to be able to play this necessarily. It's more of me explaining it. So you have a G scale. It's 7 notes until it becomes the root again. So I have G, and then G again. So you have 7 notes for the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 again, an octave up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The root again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Root again. It can be done on one string. It can be done anywhere on the guitar. But I'm just going right off the E string. It's easy to see, easy to understand. And Daniel from Facebook is saying, is it important to know the circle of fifths? Absolutely. It's also a great way to start memorizing the notes on the guitar. You play through the circle of fifths. Whatever note you start on, you go all the way through the circle of fifths. You will play every single note and eventually end up on your first note again. But let me talk about the 1-4-5 right now. Oh yeah, and Tom is talking about the circle of fifths. Actually, I think we have scheduled just a circle of fifths back to basics coming up. So stay tuned for that. Brian?
Is the circle of fifths like the basis of music theory?
It's a big part of music theory is the circle of fifths. And when I earlier was talking about intervals, from a note, like eventually you have an interval called the perfect fifth, which is like, for instance, A, B, C, D, E. I went 5 up. And so E is the 5 of A. And it looks like this. It's a power chord, or it looks like a power chord. Perfect fifth is also the first 2 notes of the Star Wars theme. But if you were to, for instance, to play an A note and play the fifth, it's an E. But then if you were to play the fifth of E, it's a B. So, which is also right there. Then you play that fifth and you get here. You play that fifth, you get here. You play that fifth, you play that fifth, you play that fifth. And you're going to actually, if you just keep playing the fifth of each consecutive note, you will go in a circle back to wherever you started that circle of fifths. A classic example, and like I said, I think we're going to do a whole live stream on it. But a classic example of how we can move through the circle of fifths, and it's a section of it is Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix. I'm not going to play the whole song, but the circle of fifths, C to G is a fifth. So G is a fifth away from C. And then a fifth away from G is D. And then a fifth away from D is A. And then a fifth away from A is E. So that's also let's do the time warp again. You know. Yeah, circle of fifths. Let's go back to the 1-4-5 now, back to G. I can just stick my hand out and I can figure out with my hand the 1, 4, and 5 of any key. I'm going to do G because that's what we were talking about. G is the 1. So I want to figure out what the 4 is. I'm just going to go up 4, starting on the 1, and see what it is. G, A, B, C. So C is the 4. 1 up from there is the 5. So G, C, and D is the 5. On the guitar, it looks like this. There's the 4, and there's the 5. Each of those roots is in that scale. 1, 2, 3, 4 is the C. 5 is the D. But then there's 6, 7, and then the 1 again. So when you have the key of a song or a key from the major scale, the 1, 4, and 5 are the only chords that are major in that key. So if I'm in the key of G, the only major chords in that key are the 1, 4, and 5. G major, C major, and D major. So L.O. Bando from Instagram says, is it necessary to learn all the scales, or maybe there is a trick? Oh, there's definitely tricks, amazing tricks to get you there. When you say all the scales, that could actually be almost infinite. But when we talk about, let's say, like playing guitar, playing all the, surviving in all the mainstream pop, rock, blues, situation, you want to learn the major scale. And if you know, like for instance, the G major scale, but can play it up and down the whole neck, which there's 5 shapes to learn. But if you know the major scale up and down the whole neck, then you actually know all the modes up and down the whole neck as well. So when you learn the major scale, the chords of the major scale, and the 5 shapes that can play the major scale up and down the neck, you're actually also playing all these modes. The other steps, you have that as one category of scales that I think you must know. The other category is the minor pentatonic scale, which is like the blues scale. That's what I was just playing. Another cool thing about the 1-4-5 and blues especially, that's just a 1-4-5. What's so cool is that you can play the major scale over that, but you can also play the minor pentatonic over that because it's the sound of blues and rock. It's not necessarily always theoretically right, but you heard it. It sounded like it worked. So to answer your question, and by the way, you guys, please, more theory questions, let me know. Brian's got one over here. Let me hold it, and I'm going to finish L.O. Bando on Instagram. What's up? So you got the major scale and 5 shapes of it, the minor pentatonic scale, which I think's 5 shapes as well. And when you know the minor pentatonic up and down, you actually also know all the shapes of the major pentatonic. So what ends up happening is you learn a few scales and get them under your fingers, and you realize that you can superimpose them as other scales as well. Can't cover it in one live stream, but let's go back to that. Oh, to Brian's question now.
It's from Captain John Albano.
Captain John will rock with you tonight. From Facebook, we are rocking.
Does this have something to do with the cage system?
Well, the cage system is also another lens. So, cage system. They're all related to each other. It's like being able to have different ways of describing something. The cage system is related to relating back to corresponding chord shapes. So it's all related, right? It's one of those things. It's like this giant can of worms that I don't want to open up in a tiny live stream, like the circle of fists. It's like, oh man, do you have a semester?
Somebody else wants to know about the flatted fifth.
the flatted fifth. Well, actually, I can answer that because I'm going to go back to that 1-4-5 now, right? Well, here's the thing, though. Check this out. If I wanted to know the 1-4-5 of D, I can go. I'm just playing different rhythms with the 1-4-5, and you guys probably go, "Oh, it's that song. Oh, it's that song." You know. I reversed it. I started with the 5-4-1, and it sounded pretty familiar. But the thing that's amazing too, I'm going to go back to the G. 1-4-5-4-1. What's cool is the 2 is a whole step up from 1, and it's minor. And then the 3 is of G major is a minor as well. Because remember, I said the 1, 4, and 5 are always the major chords of a major key. The 1, 4, 5, that means that the 2 and 3 are minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the 6th is minor, so the E minor. And then the 7th degree chord isn't really played in like pop progressions all the time, very rarely. Typically you go back to 5-5-1 to make it feel resolved. Now back to the question about the flat 5. That's actually related, and I'm pretty sure whoever commented that, and thanks for the help, Brian. Give it up for Brian, everyone. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Good question here from Eddie on YouTube as well. Okay, let me talk about the flat 5. The flat 5 is really, I think, referring to what's called the blues note in the minor pentatonic. So if I have 1, 4, and 5, the notes, the flat 5's right here. You know, it's 5 flat. It's not, I mean, you could say, oh, sharp 4, 5 flat. It's referred to as the flat 5. But it's the note in between the 4 and the 5. It's used as a passing tone in blues. Now, the minor pentatonic has what's called a minor third interval in it, which is the sound of a minor chord. But it's also, when you play it over a major chord, it's like the sound of the blues. And I'm Timothy on Facebook. Thank you, Timothy. Says, example 1-4-5 with minor pentatonic. I will right now. I'm going to do that same progression. So I'm thinking old classic rock and roll, right? If I play the G major scale over that, which is totally theoretically correct, it sounds like this. Now that is how La Bamba, which is a 1-4-5 in the key of C, that solo is the major scale as the scale. But the progression I was just playing, if I play the G minor pentatonic, and I'll throw that flat 5 in there for you. I'm going to. It sounds like this. And even better, I'm going to start the scale, then the loop will start, just so you can check it out. And I'm even going to mute my speaking mic so the guitar sounds a little better. It's a lot of work. Blues note. So that is the minor pentatonic over 145. I have another great question here because it relates to the modes. Barry on YouTube. And by the way, you guys, I'm welcoming all theory questions right now. And I think there's been some really there's been some great questions and some great questions. Okay, I think I got it together. And this is archived on the Gibson Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can go back and go through if you missed any of it, but I'm welcoming your theory questions right now, you guys. And one that I had here was from Barry Rashap on YouTube. Not really. That's our buddy's dad's name. Barry, though, which I'm a big fan of that HBO show, big fan of Bill Hader. I know Bill Hader's watching out there. You're awesome. What's the difference between a scale and a mode? This is where I go back to saying, if you know all the shape, well, actually, if you just know even one shape of the major scale, then you know it's 7 modes. A mode could be considered a scale, and it is kind of short or slang for a scale if you say the Mixolydian mode. But what that's meaning, I'm going to show you. Watch the G major scale. I'm going to play it. Let's look at what the 6th note is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's an E. And the 6 is minor. So, if I play the chords of the key of G major and the G major scale, but I think of the 6th degree and the 6th chord as home bass, like we're hearing that as home, all the chords are the same, the scale's the same, but what's changed is we're playing a different function of that relationship of chords. So we've now turned it into a mode. So you could say that E minor scale is the 6th mode of G major scale, and it has a name. The modes have Greek names, so it'd be called Aeolian. E Aeolian is G Ionian, which is the major scale. So when you say the modes, it's like those Greek names. But watch, I'm going to play, instead of G, C, D, I'm going to play the E minor. And actually, then I'll go to that 5 chord, and then I'll go to the 4 chord just to make up a progression. So E minor, D, and C, and I'll play that G major scale over it, but it'll sound sad and minor because we've turned the 6th degree into the tonal center. Check it out. E minor, D, and C. So I just did E minor, D, C, D, E minor again. That's all it was. I'm going to play the G major scale over it, but E, the 6th note, is going to sound like the root. So if I can play, if I know the 5 shapes of G major scale, I can go anywhere. I know, listen to G major. So it's also right here. Now, when you're playing in a mode, like for right now, I'm playing, it's called E Aeolian, right? When you're in any minor mode, the minor pentatonic corresponding with that root, so E minor, the E minor pentatonic's always underneath that. And the pentatonic, funny enough, penta meaning 5, it's actually is the modes and the major scale, the 7-note scales, with the half steps taken away. So there's 2 half step spots in those scales. So you take them away, you're left with 5 notes, the pentatonic scale. So here's E minor again. So I can always go to E minor and E blues licks and then also be able to visualize where the half steps are to make it that full E minor scale, also known as E Aeolian, also known as the sixth mode of the G major scale. It's a lot to soak in there. Brian, you got it, right? Brian's not a guitar player. He totally gets it. Oh, I'm not on. My vocals aren't on. Sorry, guys. My vocals weren't on. I was just rambling away there. Wow, it's covering a lot of good stuff. It's too bad it's gone forever. I was just saying you can play the G major scale over, you know, I don't know how much of that I didn't get in there. I got to be more careful about that. But anyway, yeah, Brian.
I've seen two words come up a lot in questions.
Two words coming up.
Triads.
And intervals. Okay, cool. So the intervals. Oh, you could hear me fine on Facebook and YouTube. Right. Okay, good. Good. That's just okay. Sorry about that. Great. Okay, intervals I talked about in the beginning. It's just the relationship of two notes and their distance. And they're the building blocks of triads, for instance, and they're the building blocks of scales and music. The relationship of the different intervals create. This is what I did in music school a lot, actually. Each interval has its own like emotional content to it. It sounds really good on piano when you do it, but like for instance, a minor second. Listen to this. You guys chime in with what this is. Two notes, half step apart. It's called a minor second, and it gives you that feeling, right? John Williams, when he's writing something really scary, he already has a reference point of a minor second sounding dark and foreboding, right? A major second, though. Let me change keys. So does that sound happier or sadder than the minor second? Minor second, here's the major second. Now the next one's minor third. Tell me what this sounds like. I'll do it in the low notes. Here's the minor third interval. Tell me what this sounds like. But here's the major third. That's the minor third. Here's the major third. Now the intervals can be rung out together, and that's how you build up chords. For instance, the root and a minor third ringing out together. A root and a major third ringing out together. It's happy. And it makes a major chord. Yeah, like that. Okay, let's try again. Here's the darkest interval, also known as the devil's interval in the olden times, long ago. long ago. I don't even want to say how long ago. Oh, thanks for the audio saying you guys could hear it. Great. So this is called the tritone. If like composers use that note by accident, they could get executed or something like that in the olden days. So don't play that. Except guess who played that interval constantly? Black Sabbath on the SG. In fact, they use that interval a lot. All music is tons of intervals. Sometimes playing at the same time in harmony, and other intervals are put together in a combination to create a melody. So yeah, let me go one more time to playing the G major scale, but as the E minor scale, also known as the relative minor or the sixth mode of G major. I still wanted to do that, so let's see what we got. Just a scale, you know. That was just the G major scale, but you keep feeling like that sixth note is the root. So, since music theory can be studied for years, really, what I want to say to just recap this back to basics, basic music theory, I related it to guitar. I tried to relate it to things that you can use immediately. Um, oh, Chris, yeah, wanted me to keep going with the intervals. So yeah, so we had that tritone, which is like the same thing as that flat. But from there, it's not just called a fifth, and it's not minor fifth or major fifth. It's called a perfect fifth, and that makes the power chord. So G to D is a perfect fifth. You play them together, it's also could be called a G5 chord. It's also Star Wars. It has the most triumphant, heroic sound to it when you hear those intervals together. In fact, most heroic themes are based on some type of perfect fifth. It's not just Star Wars. After perfect fifth, you have a minor six. Then you have a major six. The major six is my best friend in blues, funk, and soul. The major six. All right, so where were we? Minor six, major six, minor seven, major seven. Listen to that. Easier way to do it. What is that? What does the major seven sound like to you? If you harmonize it into a chord, you get a G major seven chord. Not everyone knows this, but I did teach elementary school music for 3 years, and I would do a little bit of ear training with them, and they were little kids, and I would always call the major seven chord the fairy princess chord. Oh, Brian, will you go on this journey? And after the major seventh is only a half step away from the root. So after the major seventh, everyone, back at the one. Now, what's interesting is after you're back at the one, which, you know, we could say 8, right? The next note, which is the 2, could be called the 9. And you hear about the 9 in chords. The 10, the 11, the 12, the 13, the 13. That's what it is. It's an octave above as you keep going through the scale. But, oh yeah, let me recap. And thanks, Chris, for having me. Everything cool, Bri? Instagram stop or? Okay, that's all right. We're wrapping up. But what I want to say as a guitar player trying to understand basic theory, there's a lot of ways to go, but it'd be really good for you to start trying to memorize the E string and the A string, what the note names are. It's really going to be good for referencing back on things. It's going to be very, very helpful. So I would make sure you start trying to just quiz yourself a little bit. And then knowing the chords of a key. What we did was I just kind of went straight to the 1-4-5 because it's a great, nice little box to see. And then also knowing that those are the major chords in a key, and then you just fill it in with the 2, the 3, and the 6, which are minor. So the 1, 4, and 5 are major. The 2, 3, and 6 are minor in any key. And so when you hear a pop song, it's almost always made up of, those combinations of chords. Most songs, within reason, of course. So I'm going to end with a little jam in that 1-4-5. This time, I'm going to focus on mixing some scales together, but I'm going to play the major form of the pentatonic, which is called the major pentatonic. But 1-4-5 in the key of D, and then we're going to see you guys hopefully real soon. Huge thank you again to Gibson. They've been great to work with. The guitars are the best, which is awesome also. And I just want to thank them for their support and inviting me back and letting me hang out with the Gibson fans and audience. So thank you, Gibson, so much. And here's a 1-4-5 in the key of D, trying to keep up for the changes. Thanks to Brian for helping out. Let's do it. This is one for you, Bri.